Hey people, it's me, Chandler Klebs, the anti-choice determinist, and I just woke up not very long ago. But there's a lot of stuff that's on my mind that I wanted to talk about in another one of my videos, and my mom just left for me to discover this morning. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do another one of my 30-minute rants here. And this time I'm going to be talking about the illusion of the self. Because as you know, my whole anti-choice determinist video series, as well as the Free Will Science or Religion podcast, um, is all about the illusion of free will. Explaining that, we're not really choosing things. We're not freely choosing things. The language of it is a bit iffy because, you know what I mean? Like some people say, well, yeah, people choose things, but they couldn't have chosen otherwise. They were always going to choose that thing because that's what the prior causes made them do. And some people throw in randomness. So let me go over free will first and explain why that's an illusion, and then I'll go on to explaining why the self is an illusion. Okay, first of all, anything we choose, there's a reason for it. You know what I mean? There's a reason why we choose things. You know, you choose what to eat for breakfast in the morning, but you eat because you're hungry. Something caused you to, because you have some desire that caused you to do something. So if you're hungry, you eat, and what you eat is based on what you either have in the house or what's available at your local grocery store, or if you're on a farm, if you're lucky enough to be one of those people who has a farm and you can grow your own food like I want to do, then you can have whatever food you're able to grow in your climate, on your land, and your geographic location. So you see what I'm saying is there's a reason why you're going to be even eating something. I like to use food as an example of choices because when we talk about choices, most of the time people think of it in terms of moral choices, good versus evil, and like choosing what you believe, which no one really chooses what they believe. And here's the deal. Here's where it gets interesting, because what you choose is either determined by reasons that you have for doing it, or also known as prior causes that led you to believe that you wanted to do that thing. Or some people try to throw in some sort of weird quantum randomness thing, like, oh, subatomic particles move in unpredictable ways, and so the world isn't completely deterministic. But what they miss about that is that first, there's got to be a cause for that too. And even if there wasn't, we're not in control of those subatomic particles. We're not in control of randomness or indeterminism, uncaused events, because we can't cause uncaused events. So here's the deal. A lot of people have a hard time seeing through the illusion of free will, realizing that we will things, we desire things, but we don't. Our will isn't free to be other than what it is at a given time. Now, it's true that you can choose something at one time and then like, oh, that didn't turn out well. Like when you're making a move in chess and you lost the game doing that stupid thing. Then in a similar situation in the future when you're playing chess, you may not make that same mistake because you remember last time it didn't turn out well. But the point is, you never are in the same situation twice, because even if the situation in the future appears identical, something has changed. Your memory of that same event in the past still remains, unless you have a poor memory. So you do something different even if the chessboard looks the same. So that's what I'm getting at. There's no such thing as could have done otherwise. There's such a thing as could do differently. You may do differently in the future than you did in the past, but there's no way that you actually could have done otherwise in the past. It's in the past. You can't time travel, and if you did time travel, you yourself would be completely compelled to go back in time and change what you didn't like because you didn't like it. So the point is, we're slaves to our desires, but we feel free when our desires are met. So that's the illusion. It's like, for example, Right now I'm recording this video because I want to record this video. Why do I want to record this video? Perhaps it's because I'm like secretly very lonely. That might have something to do with it. Partly because, well, my mom doesn't understand anything I say. I'm too autistic for her, and my girlfriend just blocked me on Facebook. So I don't know. I don't really think she's my girlfriend anymore. I don't know. That's kind of weird. So that's why I like talking on videos. Is that I get to listen to them and hear myself talk. And I don't know, it helps me think, and maybe other people enjoy my crazy rants. Very few people probably actually listen to the stuff I say. But here's the deal. Speaking of self and I and loneliness, okay, I'm going to be talking about the self. What is the self, if it's anything at all? And this is something I've been studying lately, okay? Because here's how it all started, Sometimes on the Free Will, Science, and Religion podcast, my co-host will mention something about the self being an illusion. We were talking about language in, I believe, episode 152, about, words we use. Like, people might use the word choose, pick, or select, even though choice, as we commonly understand, doesn't really exist, because nothing is really up to us. But then one of them said something about, you say I and you, even though the self is an illusion. And I think maybe we need to explore that. We need to explore how the self is an illusion, but it depends on what you mean by a self. Because here's the problem. As soon as we say the self doesn't exist, it's a bit like saying God doesn't exist. And here's the issue. Because people have different definitions of the self, just as they have different definitions of God, they have different definitions of free will. And here's what's a little bit interesting about it, is that I'm going to clarify some things. Just like, how you have libertarian free will, the kind that I and all my co-hosts in the podcast refute, where we are the true author, the uncaused cause, the first cause of what we choose, which is bizarre. It's insane, because if you choose an apple or an orange for breakfast, you are not the author of that apple or orange existing in the first place. What we choose is based on the situations that we're just thrown into. We don't even choose to exist, because our parents have sex and all that fun stuff. But anyway, okay, let me get back on topic. You see what I'm doing, people? I don't even know what I'm saying. I get sidetracked. See, I guess if I had free will, I wouldn't get so distracted. Okay, so anyway, so we need to define the self. Okay, let me go with my background here. Okay, I was sort of raised Christian, and I was sort of taught that I'm a soul or I'm a spirit. I think my mom tried to explain it to me, spirit, soul, and body. Like, we are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in a body. And this is common Christian teaching, actually. I've heard it from many Christians. Like we have a spirit, but that we inhabit a body. Like that we're inside a body. There's an us that's inside the body. But then when the body dies, then that us, that identity that's I, the self, goes on and either lives in heaven or in hell or something weird like that. So that's what I'm talking about. I don't believe in a spirit or soul in the metaphysical, spiritual, religious sense. I already don't believe in that anymore, because I really do see how, when a person gets brain damaged, if they have a blow to the head or a stroke or Alzheimer's or something like that, then their brain gets eaten up, their brain gets damaged. And as the brain gets damaged in certain points, certain memories are gone. Certain abilities to move certain parts of their body are gone. So here's the deal. If there is a self to be found, at all, it is the physical body, and particularly the brain is required. It's like the central organ that is required. So like if you take the brain out of a person, and then they're still, moving, walking, and talking, acting normal after their whole brain has been removed, well, in that case, yes, I'd have to believe in a spirit or soul if that ever happened. But I don't think that's ever happened. You don't remove the brain of a person and have their body still working. Whereas if they had a soul or a spirit, maybe that would work, like if the brain wasn't a required organ. But rather, it's like the memories and the emotions and all of that stuff is in the brain. So a lot of materialists like me, people who tend to be, scientifically minded, materialist, atheist, those types of people tend to say, well, the self is the brain. And once the brain dies, then the person dies because the person is the brain. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now, a lot of people, they take that approach. They take the self is the body. In fact, I saw a video on YouTube of Richard Dawkins talking to Daniel Dennett, and Daniel Dennett said, well, yeah, you have a soul, but it's made out of neurons, you know what I mean? Rather than a spiritual soul that has nothing to do with biology. Rather, that any self that there is, any soul, is a biological one. So once the body is destroyed, there's no person anymore. So that's the key difference. The key difference between every religious person I know, and this applies even to the Jains, is the belief they believe in a soul and an afterlife, that there's an eternal person that exists even after a body is destroyed, and therefore it can be reincarnated into another life form, another animal or another human or even a plant, a tree or something, like Grandmother Willow from Pocahontas. But you see what I'm saying is, so I already don't accept the idea of a separate self, a spiritual self. But here's the deal. Even if we say that the physical body, whether we take the brain as the self or we take the entire body, the whole body as the self, so the arms, the legs, the belly button, the nose, the mouth, whatever, the eyes, even if we take the whole body or certain parts of it as the self, there still seems to be a little bit of problem with the notion of the self. Because if I am this body here, if this is me, what you guys see here, if you're seeing this video, if you see me here, if this is me, if this is Chandler Klebs, at what point did it become me? At what point did it become Chandler Klebs? And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Because yes, this notion of self works until you analyze it. Okay, so let me get this straight. Now, I started out as a combination of my father's sperm and my mother's egg. I mean, all humans did. This is what's interesting. So, was my father's sperm me? And was my mother's egg me? And when they meet, is that me? And most people would say yes. And this is interesting, guys, because, okay, the reason that I talk about this and the reason I think about this so much is because you guys know, like, for the past, 3 years, I've been, into the abortion debate. And even though I haven't talked about it as much recently because I'm just so sick of it, I'm sick of talking about abortion and people just justifying it, But here's the deal. When people talk about when life begins and when they talk about, the zygote and the embryo and stuff, biologically I understand that, the sperm meets the egg and then the chromosomes all combine and then you have this zygote that implants in the mother's uterus. Okay, and see this, guys, you see how this all is connected? Because that zygote, long time ago, we're talking we're talking really about 29 years ago, because I'm 28, almost 29, but we're talking about, my conception. This zygote, this single-celled thing that had 46 chromosomes or whatever, was that Chandler Klebs. And what's interesting about it is that in a sense I could say, yes, that was me. because what you see now, that became me. But here's the deal. Both the sperm and the egg and those chromosomes came from my mother and father, which existed long before. And then my mother and father, they each were a zygote that came from their mother and father. So you see how this works is that it's all genes being passed on. Reproduction, humans have been passing on their genes and creating new life forms that are similar but not identical to them. So this is where it gets interesting, because what I have to realize is what I really am is life. What I really am is life. I really just am another life form. And in a sense, what I am, what me is, if there is a self, has always existed, because life has always existed. And here's the tricky part, and here's how I can get away with saying life has always existed, because I say life is eternal anyway. Like, there's always been life. There's always been some type of life form, and the things have kept reproducing and getting weirder and weirder and bigger and more complex over time. I understand evolution in a basic sense. But some say, well, no, life had a beginning. There was a certain point at which certain chemicals combined and then created life. But here's the deal. Those chemicals that, even if they weren't defined as life, those chemicals that combined, who knows how many billions of years ago, to create what we call life, well, those chemicals existed. And what if those chemicals came from something else? Well, then that something had to exist. So here's the point. I'm saying there's an eternal universe, there's an eternal life, in the sense that what I am now is I am universe, matter, life, consciousness, chemicals, whatever I am, that has always been around. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. So, like, when the sperm and the egg met, was something new created? Well, things were combined. You know what I'm saying? Like, people talk about creation, like somebody cuts down a tree and makes things out of wood. Let's say someone makes a chair out of wood. They say they created a chair, or they make a table, or they make a stool or a door, out of wood. Well, here's the deal. All they did was reshape an existing piece of wood, which came from a tree, which came from the seed, which came from another tree. You see what I'm saying? Even that, it came from life. I mean, it's considered dead after you chop down the tree, obviously, even though the tree's alive. But then there's all these things made out of wood, and then humans look and say, look, I created a chair. Like, well, but you didn't create the tree. So you see, creation doesn't exist. There's no such thing as actual creation, because no human can actually create matter. And some people get, well, and try to say, well, God can create matter. But this video isn't about God anyway. But here's the deal. What I want to get across to people is that if nothing new is created, like, how can we say that a self begins? You know what I mean? Everything I am, the sperm and the egg, and then all the nutrition while my mother was pregnant with me, everything she ate, which all either had to come from plants, or animals who ate plants, or animals who ate animals who ate plants. You get what I'm saying? And all these are life forms. They're all life. And so here's the deal. I understand that all of these things that went into building this thing now that's me, I'm like this weird monkey-looking thing. Because humans are like a monkey. Humans are just like monkeys or apes or primates that have less hair than some of the other apes. And that's what I look like. So yeah, this is really funny. I don't know why I'm getting so excited about thinking about this, but I guess I'm just excited about life. But yeah, so what I'm saying is, what I am everything. I am everything because everything else in the universe went into making me what I am now. It's not just the biological, it's not just the matter of the food and the nutrition, all the vitamins and minerals and protein and all that went into building this body here. It's also the memories, the experiences, everything I've learned, it came from something. I either heard it from my mother, or I heard it in a YouTube video, or it's something I've seen, and so then I remember what I've seen, and I generally believe what I actually see, you know, or the video games I've played, the music I've listened to, every experience everywhere, that's part of nurture. Everything's nature and nurture. It's all the start of the genetics since the zygote, plus all the nurture, all that went into educating me and feeding me, all of that is what is now labeled as me. But it all came from other sources that were not me. So here's the deal. I understand that I don't really exist. Like, it's freaky. Like, it's like really freaky when I think about it. Now, you know, in everyday life, we don't think of this. Like, in everyday life, most of us, we don't think about the illusion of self. I certainly didn't until recently. But yeah, when I understand that everything I do, everything I think, feel, say, do, all these things I supposedly choose came from other sources prior to my parents even having sex when they created me. So that's how I came to understand the illusion of free will. I understand that whatever I'm doing, I was caused to do by other things. Like, for some reason, something made me strongly desire to do this video. And I had no idea of 21 and a half minutes ago what I was going to say in this video. I have no idea where these words are coming from. It's kind of funny. I mean, that's why I have so much fun, you know, talking to George Ortega in his Exploring the Illusion of Free Will show and doing the Free Will Science and Religion podcast. And then I do these anti-choice determinist videos. And it's just me ranting about everything. So, but I hope I've made the point by now, you know, that, like, there's really no self unless we identify the self as reality itself, as reality, the universe, matter, consciousness, because everything's connected. That is to say that in a sense there's a self because there's the body, there's the brain, things that we identify as the self. But understanding that all that came from other sources, that we were built from other things that already existed. So that's just it, is that I am eternal. We all are. All humans, all animals, all plants, even the dead things, which were alive at some point, all of us are connected. We're all the same stuff. We're all stuff. We're all carbon. We're all energy, matter, universe, whatever. The physical world. I mean, that's what we are. And it's kind of strange. Because here's what I think is interesting is now some people say that there's, you know, immaterial, that there's spiritual, metaphysical stuff. And while I don't really believe that because, well, for one thing, I can't experience it. Like, I can't experience that. There's just no way. If it's immaterial, you can't see, hear, smell, feel, taste. You can't use the five senses to detect any of those things. Therefore, it's like, if it exists, it's not relevant. So that's the point. It's not like, it's not applicable. So I'm just talking about that we're all eternal in the physical sense. Matter constantly changing form, but never being created nor destroyed. And I think that's like, I can't remember, is that like the first or second law of thermodynamics? I can't even remember these laws of thermodynamics because I don't really study that. But, you know, this principle that energy or matter is neither created nor destroyed. Well, see, here's the deal. That always implies an eternal universe, an eternal reality, matter that's always been changing form, so an infinity. Whereas if somebody comes along and says that there's, you know, a God that can create and destroy matter, then all of a sudden that law of thermodynamics, or whatever you call it, the law of conservation, is wrong, it's absolutely false, and therefore all the science that is based on that would also be false. But anyway, I don't want to get too off topic with all this eternal matter stuff, but the point is, whatever we are has always existed. So in a sense, life never really begins or ends. There's always been life or matter. It's kind of a weird thing. And see, it's taken me like 25 minutes so far on this video just to explain what I mean by the illusion of the self. Because it's not exactly easy to think of. It's not something you can explain in a few minutes. Indeed, even free will being an illusion, it can't be done in a few minutes. I mean, even though we can briefly explain that determinism and indeterminism cancel out anybody being a self-cause or author of their own choices, it takes a long time for people to get it. That's why we do so many podcast episodes, and that's why George has done his show so much, and that's why so many people write books on the illusion of free will, because it takes a lot of repetition before you really get it. So you see, guys, what I'm doing is I'm meditating on the fact that I've already accepted that free will is an illusion, that I don't choose anything. Nothing's up to me. But more importantly, there is no me. There's no me. It's like, you see, and here's the problem with like the English language, and I'm sure this is a problem with a lot of languages, but I only know English. But see, here's the deal. We use words like I, we, us, them, you. You know what I mean? Me, myself, I. All these words, we use them. You see what I do? We use them. And when I say we, I'm referring to humans who speak English. We use these words because it's impossible to construct a sentence in the English language without saying, like, how are you, and what do you want for breakfast, and you don't choose what happens in your life, because it's determined by prior causes, or if it was random, it's not up to you. So you and I, we have to use these words because that's how the language is built. The whole language is built under the illusion of self. So that's what's interesting, is that I understand at an intellectual level, like I understand why there's no self, that there's no me that's in control of things, there's no free will, there's no choosing agent. I get that. So when I think of myself, what exactly do I think of? And here's what I think of. Here's how I experience the self. While I know it's an illusion, while I know it's just phony, here's how I experience the self. I experience myself as the consciousness, as the observer. And here's how it looks. Is basically, because sight is my primary sense. Obviously I can hear too. I can see and hear. I have a terrible sense of smell and taste. But it feels as if there's a me right where my eyes are, or right behind my eyes, because I see everything through my eyes, but only when I'm wearing my glasses. Because when I'm not wearing my glasses, I kind of see some things, but not very much, But so that's the thing, is that it appears to me that I'm here, like I'm here in relation to things like, that's just the way things appear, I'm here in this chair, and over here is my Fluttershy pony, and behind me is my horse calendar, and every month has a different horse. This one has a horse that looks like a Dalmatian. I think you call it Appaloosa, but I can't remember. But you know what I mean? Like, I see these things, and it's like, by the way, here's another horse. I really love horses. Here's my brown horse friend here. It's just cool. But you guys get what I'm saying? Like, I feel that I am wherever my eyes are. Like if I were blind, it would be very hard to even have a sense of self, because the location of being somewhere. Any self, if I say I believe in any self at all, if I label anything as a self, it is only the consciousness. It is what I see, what I hear, that reveals that I'm here. Other things are other places. That's all the self is to me. If the self means anything, it means being aware of what's going on. But it does not mean being in control, because free will is an illusion, and I know that. And it's a bit complicated, and I've talked long enough, so I really hope that makes sense. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Goodbye.